When I first heard her say those words, I told my husband to sleep on the couch. I wasn't supposed to hear them. She said it quietly, almost to herself, over the sound of rain tapping against the workshop's tin roof. But I did hear, and it stuck with me long after I should have let it go. She was standing by the counter, one hand resting on the chipped wooden surface, the other clutching a folded receipt like it was proof of something. Her voice wasn't angry, just tired in a way that made me want to listen closer. We weren't friends exactly. She came in once every few weeks, always around closing time, to pick up her car after we'd finished the tune-ups. Ms. Hale, mid-40s, calm, collected, dressed like someone who knew how to make even plain clothes look deliberate. There was something about the way she carried herself, shoulders straight, chin lifted just enough, that made me lower my own voice without meaning to. That night, the power had flickered twice, the air smelling faintly of wet asphalt and oil. She'd shown up early, umbrella in hand, her hair damp around the edges. I wiped my hands on a rag and nodded toward her keys. "Still running smooth?" I asked. She gave that small, practiced smile I'd seen before, the kind people use when they've had a long day and don't want to talk about it. "For now," she said. "Cars behave better than people." I laughed softly, but she didn't. She just looked at me, as if the words had slipped out and she couldn't take them back. For a moment, neither of us moved. The rain filled the silence. Then she sighed and pressed the receipt onto the counter. "Sorry, that was unnecessary." "It's fine," I said quickly. "I've heard worse comparisons." That made her smile again, real this time, small but unguarded. The kind that feels like a secret being shared. When she reached for her keys, our fingers brushed, barely. A nothing moment, but something about it tightened my chest. Maybe it was how quickly she pulled her hand back, or how her eyes flickered toward the door like she'd just realized she'd said too much. She hesitated before leaving. The sound of her heels stopped near the doorway, and I heard her take a breath, like she was trying to decide if she should say something else. "You shouldn't stay so late," she said finally, without turning around. "It's not good for you." I wanted to ask what she meant, if she said that because she worried about me, or because she understood what it was like to have nowhere better to go. But I didn't. I just said, "I don't mind it," and watched her open the umbrella and step into the rain. Through the glass, I saw her pause at the curb, standing there as if she'd forgotten something. Then she shook her head and walked away. I should have gone back to locking up. Instead, I stood there for a long minute, listening to the rain and trying to figure out why my chest felt heavier than before. Maybe it was just the weather. Maybe it was the way her voice had cracked slightly when she said couch. Either way, when I turned off the lights that night, her words were still looping in my head, soft, tired, and almost tender. I told my husband to sleep on the couch. And somehow, I couldn't stop wondering what it must have felt like to wake up and find the couch empty. She came back 3 days later, saying her car was making a noise it shouldn't. It wasn't. I checked, but I didn't tell her that right away. It was late afternoon, those in-between hours when the sun makes everything look softer than it should. The garage was nearly empty, the hum of the ceiling fan the only sound between us. She stood just inside the doorway, arms crossed, like she wasn't sure if she should have come at all. "I think something's wrong again," she said, handing me the keys. Her nails were short, clean, unpolished. Her hands, steady but tense, stayed folded against her chest after I took the keys. I noticed the way her wedding ring caught the light when she moved. It didn't look new. I started the car, listened. Nothing unusual. Still, I kept the hood open longer than necessary, wiping an already clean surface, pretending to listen harder. She waited a few feet away, her posture composed but eyes restless, scanning the floor, the walls, the clock, anywhere but me. "You ever get the feeling something's off?" she said suddenly. "Even when you can't prove it?" I looked up from the engine. She wasn't talking about the car. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Happens all the time." She gave a faint smile, like she appreciated the lie we were both pretending wasn't one. Then she exhaled and leaned against the counter. Her shoulders dropped slightly, her face softening in a way I hadn't seen before. For a few seconds, she just stood there. No mask, no careful composure. Just tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep. You work too much, I said, before I could stop myself. She tilted her head, almost amused. Says the boy covered in grease at 7 in the evening. Touché. I smiled, rubbing the back of my neck. Still, you look like someone who forgets to stop. That made her laugh. Not loud, but enough to make me look up. It was the kind of laugh that came out of her like she hadn't meant to let it escape. Short, warm, gone too fast. For a heartbeat, she met my eyes. And it felt like everything in the room went still. The fan, the clock, even the light filtering through the windows. Just that quiet look between us, full of things neither of us were ready to name. Then she blinked, as if realizing she'd stayed too long in that silence, and straightened. So, is my car safe to drive? Completely, I said. She reached for her keys. I noticed the faint tremor in her hand as she took them. Barely there, but it was. I didn't mention it. Good, she murmured, turning toward the door. Then, almost as an afterthought, you shan't be so easy to talk to. And before I could think of anything to say back, she was gone again, leaving behind that same faint scent of rain and something heavier I couldn't name. That night, I caught myself replaying her laugh. Not the words, not the look, just that small sound. It was too short to mean anything, but somehow it did. The rain came harder that night than it had in weeks. Thick drops hammering the metal roof of the garage until the sound felt almost alive. I was finishing paperwork at the small desk near the window when headlights cut through the downpour. Her car again. She didn't get out right away. I could just make out her silhouette behind the fogged windshield, sitting still, hands on the steering wheel. I went to the door before I could stop myself. When she finally stepped out, she wasn't carrying the practiced calm I'd come to expect. Her hair clung to her cheeks, mascara faintly smudged under her eyes. She looked human in a way that made my chest tighten. I didn't know where else to go, she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the rain. I didn't ask what happened. I just nodded and unlocked the side office, the one with the heat or that sometimes worked. She followed me in, her shoes leaving dark prints on the tile. For a while, neither of us spoke. I handed her a towel from the supply closet. She accepted it with both hands, holding it like she needed a moment before using it. Everything okay? I asked. She gave a half laugh, shaky and thin. My husband stopped answering his phone. I thought, she caught herself. Never mind. The word husband shouldn't have hit as hard as it did, but it did. I looked down at the desk, pretending to read the same form twice. You want some coffee? I asked, just to fill the silence. She nodded. I poured 2 paper cups, both too bitter. She held hers close, palms wrapped around it for warmth. The heater hummed weakly. I'm sorry for showing up like this, she said after a while. It's stupid. I just didn't want to be alone in that house tonight. You're fine, I said. I don't mind. She smiled faintly. You always say that. The words lingered between us. I caught her eyes then, and for the first time, she didn't look away. The space between us felt thinner than it was. Outside, thunder rolled. The lights flickered once. She set her coffee down, her fingers brushing mine as she did. Not an accident. Just a pause. Her hand stayed there for a second too long. My pulse kicked hard in my throat. Then her phone buzzed on the counter, vibrating against the metal edge. The sound broke everything. She flinched. I saw the name flash on the screen before she turned it face down. Her husband. She didn't pick up. Didn't move for a moment, either. Just stared at the blank counter like it might swallow her whole. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, almost lost under the rain. He always calls when he's guilty. I didn't know what to say to that. I just wanted to reach across, to take her hand, to let her rest for once. But I didn't. She looked up at me then, her eyes red-rimmed but steady. You should lock up, she said softly. It's late. She left her untouched coffee beside mine. And as the door closed behind her, I realized my hand was still hovering over the spot where hers had been, warm, trembling, useless. I didn't see her for almost 2 weeks after that night. Long enough for me to convince myself it hadn't meant anything. Then, one evening just before closing, she appeared again. No car this time. Just her, standing by the door of the workshop like she'd been walking for hours and ended up here by accident. You're still open? she asked. Just about to close, I said, wiping my hands on a rag that didn't need wiping. She nodded, glancing around the dim shop. Good. I didn't want to interrupt anything. She said it like it mattered, like interrupting me would be worse than showing up without a reason. I turned off the compressor and gestured to the small office. It's warmer in there. She followed. The air inside felt too still, too aware. I could smell her perfume, a faint trace of cedar, and something floral that didn't belong in a place like this. She sat across from me at the old desk, fingers tracing the rim of an empty coffee cup. You ever feel like you've already messed something up, she said after a long pause, but you don't know what part of you did it. I wasn't sure if she wanted an answer. Yeah, I said quietly. More often than I admit. She smiled faintly. Not happy, just seen. The silence that followed wasn't empty this time. It was heavy, full of everything we'd been avoiding. Her eyes lingered on me too long, searching, like she wanted to name the thing hanging between us, but couldn't. I shifted in my chair. I keep thinking about that night you came here in the rain. She looked down. So do I. Why did you? I asked. Really? She didn't move for a long moment. Then, because it felt like the only place where I wasn't pretending. That landed deep. I could feel it in my throat. I shouldn't have come, she added quickly, her voice breaking on the last word. You're kind. And she stopped. Her hand was trembling slightly, the faintest motion, like she was trying not to let it show. I wanted to reach across the desk again, but I didn't. I just watched her. Every second of that silence felt like a question neither of us could answer. Finally, I said, we can't keep doing this. Her gaze lifted. Doing what? This? I gestured vaguely between us. Whatever this is. You come here, I forget where the line is. You look at me like that, and I don't, she said softly. Her voice wasn't angry. It was pleading. We stared at each other for what felt like forever. The sound of the clock ticking behind us filled the space where words failed. Then she whispered, almost to herself, I don't know how to stop coming here. That broke something quiet inside me. She stood, straightened her coat, and didn't look back when she left. And when the door finally shut, the room felt smaller, like the air had forgotten how to move without her in it. It was a Thursday evening when she came by again, just before closing, as usual. But this time, she didn't walk into the garage. She stood outside under the flickering light, holding her phone in both hands, eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. When she finally looked up, she said, Do you mind if I sit for a bit? I nodded toward the office. You know you don't have to ask. She smiled faintly, but her voice when she spoke again was thinner, smaller. I do, actually. Inside, the air was cooler than usual. I made us coffee again, mostly to have something to do with my hands. She didn't drink hers. She just turned her phone over on the desk, screen face up. A paused voicemail. From him? I asked. She nodded. He's gone. Just left a message and disappeared. She pressed play before I could say anything. The voice that came through was low, strained, her husband's. Apologizing, not crying, not angry. Just finished. I'm sorry, he said on the recording. I can't keep being the person who watches you disappear into silence. You deserve someone who still believes in you. I can't be that man anymore. When it ended, she didn't move. The only sound was the soft hum of the refrigerator in the corner. He sent that 2 weeks ago, she said quietly. I only listened today. I sat back, unsure what to say. You didn't know? She shook her head, eyes distant. I thought he was punishing me. Turns out, he was letting me go. Her voice cracked then, barely, but enough to cut through me. I thought I'd feel angry, she whispered. But I don't. Just empty. Like someone scraped everything out and left the shell. I wanted to say something to make it better, but there wasn't anything. So I said nothing. I just stayed there, watching the way she twisted her wedding ring, turning it round and round like he was trying to find a version of herself that still fit inside it. Then she looked at me. You remind me of my brother. The words hit sideways, gentle but disarming. He was younger too, she continued. He used to listen the way you do, like every word mattered, even the ones that didn't. I swallowed hard. What happened to him? Car accident. 20 years ago. She said it like she was naming a weather pattern. Inevitable, familiar. For a moment, Everything clicked into something heavier. The way she lingered around the shop, the way her eyes softened when I spoke, the distance she kept when things got too close. Maybe I wasn't the person she saw at all. Maybe I was just a shadow of someone she'd already lost. I didn't move closer, didn't say the wrong thing, just sat there, letting the silence breathe between us. Finally, she took off her wedding ring, placed it on the desk, and said, "I don't know who I'm supposed to be without him." Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. And all I could think was how strange it felt to be the only witness to someone's unraveling. How quietly a life can come apart without making any sound at all. It was late, past closing, the kind of late where even the air feels slower. I was cleaning the counters, half listening to the hum of the vending machine, when I heard the soft knock on the glass door. She didn't wait for me to answer, just stepped inside, carrying a paper bag and 2 thermoses. Her eyes looked different, less guarded, but tired in a way that felt final. "I didn't want to eat alone," she said. I didn't ask if she was okay. I just nodded and cleared the small space on the workbench. She unpacked 2 sandwiches, set one in front of me, and sat down across from me on the stool that always squeaked when someone shifted. We ate in silence for a while. Not an uncomfortable silence, just one that knew its place. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, steady. "I went by the house today. Most of his things are gone." I looked at her, but she kept her gaze on the sandwich, hands folded neatly. "I thought it would feel like freedom," she continued. "It doesn't. It just feels quiet." She smiled then, small and unsteady. "You'd think I'd be used to quiet by now." I wanted to tell her that quiet wasn't always empty. Sometimes it meant peace. But I didn't. Words felt too heavy for what hung between us. Instead, I said, "You don't have to fill it right away." She looked up, really looked, and something in her expression softened, like she finally allowed herself to see me without all the noise between us. "Do you ever feel like your life's been waiting for you to catch up to it?" she asked. "All the time," I said. She nodded, like that was enough. Then she reached for her thermos, and her hand brushed mine again. This time, not by accident. She didn't pull away. It wasn't electric or cinematic. It was slow, human, real. The kind of touch that carries everything words can't. I could feel her pulse through her skin, unsteady, like mine. We didn't move closer. Didn't have to. Just sat there, our hands touching on the cold metal table, the smell of oil and coffee hanging around us. Her voice broke the silence, low and uncertain. "I don't know what this is supposed to be. Maybe it doesn't have to be anything," I said. "Maybe it's just here." She let out a small laugh, a tired, grateful one, and leaned forward, resting her forehead against the back of her hand, still close to mine. The fan hummed above us. Somewhere outside, a car passed, headlights slicing briefly through the window before disappearing. She didn't look at me again when she spoke. "I just need something that doesn't hurt when I breathe." I wanted to tell her I understood, that I'd been holding my breath for weeks too. But instead, I just stayed there beside her, our hands still barely touching, neither of us moving to break it. We stayed like that until the clock hit midnight, until silence no longer felt like something to fix, but something we'd both finally learned to live inside. It's been months now since that night in the garage, the one where we didn't say what we both already knew. She still comes by sometimes. Not as often, just enough. The first few times, it felt strange, like we were pretending again, pretending to be just 2 people who happened to know each other. But something in the air between us had shifted. The silence that once burned now felt gentle, familiar. We don't talk about her husband. We don't talk about the ring that used to sit on her finger or the voicemail she never deleted. Instead, we talk about small things, music, recipes, her garden that refuses to grow anything but rosemary. She laughs easier now, and when she does, she looks 10 years younger. The funny thing is, I never told her what that time meant for me, how being near her changed the way I saw everything, how she taught me that love isn't always something you chase. Sometimes it's something you let rest quietly beside you. I used to think love was about confession, about the moment you finally say the words. But she showed me it can exist in the quiet, in the shared coffee gone cold, in a glance that lingers a little too long. She once told me she used to be afraid of starting over, I didn't say it then, but I think I was afraid of never starting at all. Now, when she smiles at me from across the shop, hair loose, sleeves rolled up, sunlight catching the edge of her cheek, I realize something simple but honest. We never needed to name it. What we had, what we still have, isn't about ownership or timing or the right label. It's about being seen, fully, without fixing or filling the silence. There's no grand ending here. No ever after. Just two people who met in the middle of their own broken pieces and decided not to turn away. Sometimes she leaves a cup of coffee for me when she goes, black, no sugar, the way I like it. And sometimes, when she's gone, I find her scarf left draped over the chair, soft and absent-minded, like a reminder that not everything beautiful has to be kept to be real. I don't know where this goes from here. Maybe it doesn't go anywhere. Maybe that's okay. What I do know is that I still think about that night. The rain, the silence, her voice sang. I didn't want to be alone. And I realize now that neither of us was. Not really. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?